Strathade Estate is basically a peninsula of something like 15,300 acres or thereabouts, which takes in on its northern boundaries a fair chunk of the Black Coolins. These days, I should think half of the residents of Strathade Estate in the summer are actually holiday home owners. I suppose there are something like 50-odd crofts here. There's nothing like the permanent crofting community that there was, and indeed a lot of them no longer really actively, individually work their crofts. The estate farm is really only about 350 acres of sort of in-byland and hill grazing over another few thousand acres. 6,000 acres of it are probably pretty vertical. Once upon a time in an aeroplane, I read in one of these dreadful in-flight magazines that are full of nothing, something about farming salmon somewhere. And that must have caught my overtired imagination on the way back from America or something, and just sounded like an interesting and slightly revolutionary thing to do. I've always been keen on farming notionally anyway, even in a traditional agricultural sense, but the idea of alternative farming something a bit more romantic and a bit more risky, sort of caught on. So when this estate came on the market, I managed to make a successful bid for it, basically predicated on the fact that there was a suitable or an apparently suitable sea loch, which looked like it would be a workable environment for rearing salmon. The thing about buying an estate like this, it's all very well if you happen to be in a period of your life where you're relatively high earning, to say, I can afford to rush out and buy this and maybe even spend a few bob to, tart the place up and make it look nice. But as a responsible landowner, you've got to think a little bit beyond that, and maybe even a generation or two beyond that, and say, well, can we afford to keep this? Is it going to be a millstone around our necks within 5 years' time? Well, it's important for me going into this to have some idea of getting income, of making the estate, if not profitable, at least reducing the loss. Ian McKinnon, having struggled to try and keep the hill flock going during the long decline of Strathade Estate, well, I should imagine he thought it was really from bad to worse as far as he was concerned.
We just didn't know what to think, actually. I can remember a comment made at the time was to a neighbour of mine was probably we'll end up growing poppies it was in the garden by the Kilmarie house, actually. So that was sort of the flippant comment made at the time, but you look on a pop star as somebody, that's really not got an awful lot of go in him, but I couldn't say that about Ian at all when he came on the scene. He's a good farmer.
I was warned by the late Willie McRae of the Scottish Nationalist Party that, it was a big mistake coming up here or buying Strathade. It was a big mistake to be involved in any way with the sort of complexities of the social scene up here, that I would not be respected, I would not be liked, and all the rest of it. I argued with Willie McRae about this and said, well, I just don't believe that people are that simple-minded.
Where are these off to?
Well, most of them possibly are going down to eastern counties in England. As we're selecting lambs there today for a special market. Well, everybody's looking now for this lamb with a bit of length to it, a bit of scope to it, to grow on, get more weight on without becoming fat.
Mm-hmm. And we've got no problems in moving these, no restrictions, no nuclear lambs here.
No, we don't. We have had tests done by the ministry, and readings were very low. We've had some lambs even off the farm here itself, and they were giving us readings of about 180 spectros per kilo, which is, very low.
Which is very low considering the high rainfall we have here.
Right.
I think if anyone was going to get clobbered, we would, but...
would have thought so, but...
They're not glowing in the dark.
Fortunately, they're not. No. He's taken a fair interest in the running of the estate. He's been to the farm, practically every week. In this past year, I just don't know how he can carry on, doing as much travelling as he does do. That's a good thing about Ian. He's not sort of an absentee landlord.
On the credit side, Ian Anderson is here. He's doing something. There is some economic activity. There's some employment. And that is a lot more that can be said for many more of these people. On this estate, for instance, the previous one, the fellow that Anderson bought it from, was a man called David Lewis, who was a straightforward property speculator based in London, who bought it speculatively and thought he could sell it speculatively, and in the interim did nothing. So you have 15,000 acres of this country which lay derelict for the duration of his stewardship.
Brian Wilson's got nothing on me when it comes to, running around and pointing the finger at some, scum of the earth who are still, landed gentry around Scotland. It really annoys me to see run down. I mean, they refuse to give up. They refuse to quit and call it a day. That's what really gets my goat.
Rural communities should not be subject to that lottery, that every time an estate changes hands, the lottery begins again of whether it's going to be just yet another useless parasitical figure, or whether it's going to be someone who perhaps in the short term, perhaps for amusement, perhaps for serious and decent purposes, is prepared to invest in it.
The last few years I've been doing part-time on the estate, gathering and dipping and all that, bits of fencing. A lot of them probably won't know him yet. They just know of him as Ian Anderson. Probably a lot of them haven't met him. Be quite a few that haven't. Most of the younger ones, I suppose.
What about the older folks in Elgol?
I don't think they'll ever have met him. They wouldn't. I don't suppose they would be interested anyway. Landlord would be a landlord to them, nothing, just no matter who it was just all one to them.
It's pointless getting really self-conscious about this thing about being the laird and the crofters being your tenants who pay your rent and all that. I mean, it's no big deal. But I mean, I'm sure it's no big deal to them either. I mean, it really isn't. We tripled the rents a few years ago. For the first time, the rents went up from an average of about £4 a year per croft. We put them up to an average of about £12 per year per croft, because we decided that rather than not collect the rents, that we would make available from the estate every year a sum of money equal to the rents that we'd collected to be used on something for the good of crofting. And somebody else